So here's the thing about ancient alien artifacts. They're supposed to be mysterious, awe-inspiring, and preferably cooperative when important people show up with credentials and expectations. The relic sitting in the center of the research vessel Cosmic Importance had apparently missed that memo. For 3 months, this thing had been the galaxy's most expensive paperweight. It just sat there, a smooth obsidian obelisk about 8 feet tall, covered in geometric patterns that probably meant something profound to someone, somewhere, who was conveniently dead for the last 50,000 years. Every admiral, chancellor, high priest, and self-important academic in the Galactic Council had taken their shot at making it do literally anything. The results were consistently disappointing. Sergeant Mike Torres had watched the whole circus from the maintenance catwalks above the observation chamber. His job was simple: keep the ship running, fix things that broke, and avoid getting involved in whatever cosmic nonsense the brass was obsessed with this week. He'd been doing great on all 3 counts until this morning. "Torres, get down here." That was Lieutenant Chen's voice crackling through his comm unit. Torres looked down from where he'd been rewiring a cooling junction. The observation chamber below was packed with the usual crowd of decorated officials, standing around looking constipated with importance. "Kind of busy, Lieutenant. The environmental system in Section 7 is making sounds that violate 3 laws of physics. The coffee machine is broken." Torres closed his eyes. "I'll be right down." See, this was his actual job on the Cosmic Importance. Sure, his official title was Environmental Systems Technician, but his real purpose in life had become keeping the coffee flowing for stressed-out officers who couldn't understand why an ancient superweapon would unacknowledge their college degrees. He'd fixed that machine 17 times in 3 months. He was pretty sure someone was breaking it on purpose at this point. The observation chamber was somehow even more ridiculous up close than from above. Someone had set up velvet ropes around the relic like it was a museum exhibit. There were probably 24 species represented in the room. Everything from the crystalline Jeks to the gaseous Vorporians floating in their containment suits. Everyone was muttering in their various languages, which the translation implants in Torres's head helpfully rendered as an overlapping chorus of intellectual-sounding anxiety. Admiral Vexthorn, a Kralix with 4 arms and enough metals to build a small spacecraft, was addressing the crowd. "Perhaps if we approach from the northeast axis during the stellar alignment." "We tried that last week," someone shouted back. Same result, nothing. Torres squeezed past a group of Quellan scientists having what looked like a heated debate, conducted entirely through color-changing head crests. He made it to the coffee machine in the adjacent break room. The problem was immediately obvious. Someone had tried to brew Vorporian nutrient sludge in a machine designed for liquids. The internal components looked like a crime scene. Through the doorway he could see the relic doing what it did best. Absolutely nothing. It sat there, completely inert, probably judging everyone. Torres couldn't help but smirk. There was something deeply satisfying about watching the galaxy's elite get humbled by a fancy rock. His comm beeped again. "Torres, when you're done with the coffee situation, I need you to check the panel array near the relic, Section C14. Something's been flickering." Torres sighed, elbow deep in coffee machine guts. "Roger that. Give me 20 minutes to make this thing stop looking like a horror movie." 20 minutes turned into 40 because the Vorporian sludge had apparently achieved sentience and was actively resisting removal. But eventually Torres had the machine purring like new. He grabbed his toolkit and headed back into the observation chamber. The crowd had thinned slightly, but Admiral Vexthorn was still there, now consulting with a tall human in an expensive suit. Dr. Gerald Mortensen, xenoarchaeologist and the most condescending person Torres had ever met. Mortensen had made his opinion clear during their one previous interaction. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, barely more advanced than stone tools in cosmic terms, and had no business touching anything actually important. Torres found panel C14 behind a decorative pillar, conveniently out of everyone's way. Perfect. He popped it open and immediately saw the problem. Some genius had crossed 2 power feeds during installation. It was flickering because it was slowly melting itself. He got to work rerouting the connections. From his position, he had a perfect view of the relic and the increasingly desperate attempts to activate it. This was better than cable television. Admiral Vexthorn approached the relic for what Torres assumed was the 40th time this month. The Admiral was a decorated war hero, commander of the Third Fleet and possessor of enough tactical genius to fill a small library. None of this impressed the Relic even slightly. By the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, Vexthorn announced, his forearms spread in what was probably a meaningful gesture in Kralik's culture. I command this ancient repository to acknowledge our presence and grant us access to its knowledge. The Relic's response was deafening in its silence, not even a courtesy flicker. Vexthorn's eye stalks drooped slightly. Behind him, his honor guard of 6 Kralik's warriors stood at attention, their ceremonial weapons gleaming. They'd been standing there for 2 hours. Torres almost felt bad for them. Almost. Perhaps, offered Commander Quilnix, a Mentari whose telepathic abilities were legendary, a more spiritual approach is required. Quilnix was basically a floating jellyfish in a mobility harness, which somehow made her look even more dignified than the Admiral. What followed was 6 hours of meditation. Torres finished his panel repair, went to lunch, fixed 2 more minor issues in other sections, and came back. Quilnix was still there, hovering in front of the Relic, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex sequences that probably meant something profound. The Relic remained aggressively indifferent. When Quilnix finally gave up, her telepathic voice echoed in everyone's heads with obvious frustration. I sense no consciousness within. Either it is too alien for my abilities, or it is simply inert. It's not inert, Dr. Mortensen interjected, stepping forward with a datapad covered in scrolling alien text. My analysis of the energy signatures indicates a dormant but functional system. We simply haven't determined the correct activation sequence. He shot a glance at Torres, who was now pretending to inspect a nearby air vent. Perhaps if everyone without advanced degrees cleared the room, we could focus properly. Torres rolled his eyes and moved to a different maintenance task. He'd been working on the cosmic importance for 2 years and had learned that the best survival strategy was to be forgettable. Let the important people have their important moments while he kept the ship from falling apart. Over the next hour, Mortensen tried everything. He recited phrases in 17 dead languages. He placed various crystal arrays around the Relic's base. He even brought out what he claimed was a resonance tuning fork, calibrated to ancient frequencies. Torres was pretty sure it was just a fancy dinner bell, but nobody asked his opinion. The Relic did not ring, resonate, or respond. A Quellan high priest named Zelrak was next. He brought an entire ceremonial procession, complete with harmonic chanting and the burning of sacred herbs that made everyone's eyes water. The translation implants rendered the chants as something about awakening the sleeper and bridging the void between stars. It was actually kind of pretty, in a way that made Torres's sinuses hate him. Nothing. The Relic apparently wasn't religious. This is absurd, Admiral Vexthorn finally declared. We have brought our finest minds, our most decorated leaders, our spiritual guides. What more could this artifact possibly require? Dr. Mortensen was typing furiously on his datapad. The civilization that created this was clearly highly advanced. Perhaps it requires a specific genetic signature or a particular brainwave pattern, or maybe it's just broken, Torres muttered, not quite under his breath. The room went silent. Every head, stalk, and sensory organ turned toward him. Mortensen's expression could have frozen helium. Sergeant, I don't recall asking for input from the maintenance staff. Just saying, Doc. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. Maybe whoever built this thing died before they could leave an instruction manual. The energy readings clearly indicate, yeah, I saw your readings. They also said the coffee machine had sentient aspirations, and I fixed that by cleaning out the gunk. Sometimes sophisticated equipment breaks in unsophisticated ways. Admiral Vexthorn's eye stalk swiveled between them. While I appreciate all perspectives, Sergeant, perhaps we should leave the analysis to the experts. Torres shrugged and went back to his work. Fine. Let them have their expert opinions. He had a stuck ventilation fan in Section 8 that was actually solvable, but as he gathered his tools, he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was overthinking this. The Relic wasn't responding to authority or ceremony or spiritual wavelengths or any of the complicated approaches they kept trying. What if it was waiting for something simpler? Something practical? Nah, that would make too much sense. And the galaxy ran on making things as complicated as possible. He headed for the exit, leaving the VIPs to their very important failures. Torres was 3 sections away when his comm unit exploded with Lieutenant Chen's voice. "Torres, get back to the observation chamber now. Emergency." "What kind of emergency? Hull breach? Reactor leak? Someone tried to make tea in the coffee machine again?" "Just get here." When Torres arrived, the scene was chaos. Smoke was drifting from somewhere near the Relic, and half the lights in the chamber were flickering. Admiral Vexthorn was shouting orders in Kralix while Dr. Mortensen gestured dramatically at a wall panel that was sparking like a miniature fireworks display. "What happened?" Torres asked, already moving toward the electrical problem. "Dr. Mortensen's resonance experiment may have been slightly more powerful than anticipated," Lieutenant Chen explained, which was officer speak for, "Someone screwed up big time." "I had the calculations perfectly calibrated," Mortensen protested. "The energy feedback was completely unexpected." Torres examined the damaged panel. "You overloaded the circuit by about 300%. This thing's fried. I'll need to reroute power from the backup junction behind the Relic." "Behind it?" Mortensen frowned. "There's no access panel behind." "There is if you're the person who actually maintains this ship." Torres grabbed his toolkit and approached the Relic, looking for the maintenance access he knew was somewhere on the backside. The VIPs parted like he was contagious. The panel was right where he remembered, but someone had installed a decorative covering over it. Of course they had. Can't have ugly maintenance access ruining the mystical ambiance. Torres wedged his fingers under the covering and pulled. It was stuck. "Need some leverage here," he muttered, pressing his left hand against the Relic's smooth surface while yanking on the covering with his right. The Relic lit up like someone had plugged in the sun. Torres yelped and jerked backward, but the light followed his hand. Geometric patterns cascaded across the obelisk's surface, glowing with a blue-white intensity that made everyone shield their eyes. A low hum filled the chamber, rising in pitch until it was almost musical. "What did you do?" Mortensen shouted. "I didn't do anything, I just touched it." "Nobody just touches a 50,000-year-old artifact." "I was trying to fix your electrical fire." The Relic's glow intensified, and suddenly Torres's vision exploded with information. Holographic displays appeared in the air around him, visible only to him based on everyone else's confused expressions. There were star maps, technical readouts in languages he shouldn't be able to read but somehow could, and what looked like a user interface designed by someone with a very practical sense of design. Torres said intelligently. "Is anyone else seeing this?" "Seeing what?" Admiral Vexthorn demanded. "Sergeant, report." "There's like a holographic menu floating in front of me. It's got options. Lots of options. Defense grid, historical archives, power management, diagnostics." He squinted at one section. Looks like there's a getting started tutorial." The room erupted in overlapping voices, everyone shouting questions and commands simultaneously. Torres tuned them out and focused on the displays. The interface was surprisingly intuitive. Icons represented different functions, and when he concentrated on one, additional information appeared. It was like the universe's most advanced touchscreen, except he was controlling it with his thoughts. "This is impossible," Mortensen said, pushing forward. "A human sergeant cannot be the key to an ancient alien superweapon. I have 3 doctorate degrees in xenoarchaeology." "Maybe that's your problem," Torres muttered, still navigating the menus. "This thing doesn't seem to care about degrees." He found something labeled System Overview and selected it mentally. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with thousands of points of light scattered across multiple spiral arms. Text scrolled beside it in that shouldn't be readable but was language. Torres read it aloud without thinking. "Automated Defense Network, operational status, standby mode. Awaiting authorized operator to resume defensive posture." He blinked. "There's a note here. It says the last operator was removed from active duty approximately 51,000 years ago due to, death." "What does it say about authorization requirements?" Admiral Vexthorn asked, his tactical mind clearly seeing past the absurdity to the important questions. Torres dug deeper into the menus. There was a section labeled Operator Selection Criteria. He opened it and immediately started laughing. He couldn't help it. "Sergeant?" Lieutenant Chen prompted. "Okay, so according to this, the Relic chooses operators based on 3 criteria. 1. Demonstrated problem-solving ability under pressure. 2. Practical application of knowledge over theoretical understanding. 3. Absence of excessive bureaucratic tendencies. He looked up at the assembled VIPs with a grin. Apparently, the ancient aliens who built this thing hated meetings as much as I do. The silence that followed was beautiful. Dr. Mortenson's face went through several interesting colors. That cannot possibly be the selection criteria for a weapon system of this magnitude. I'm just reading what it says, Doc. There's even a note from the original builders. Torres cleared his throat dramatically. To whoever finds this, if you're spending more time arguing about who should use this than actually using it, you've already failed the test. Sincerely, the Architect Collective, who died waiting for the Council to approve our defense activation request. Admiral Vexthorn's eye stalks drooped. They were killed by their own bureaucracy. Looks that way. The Relic chimed and new information flooded Torres's vision. His grin faded. Guys? We might have a bigger problem than hurt feelings about who gets to play with the ancient death machine. What kind of problem? Lieutenant Chen asked. Torres's hands were shaking slightly as he parsed the incoming data. The kind where the species that killed the Relic's builders is about 3 days away from Council space, and they brought friends. The observation chamber descended into what Torres could only describe as organized panic, which was like regular panic but with more shouting and hand gestures. Admiral Vexthorn immediately started barking orders into his comm, calling for military advisors. Dr. Mortenson was demanding access to the Relic's data, despite having no way to actually see it. Commander Quilnix was attempting to telepathically sense the threat, which seemed pointless but probably made her feel better. Torres, meanwhile, was trying to figure out how to operate a 50,000-year-old defense network without accidentally destroying something important. The interface was user-friendly in the same way a fighter jet cockpit was user-friendly. Once you knew what all the buttons did, it was great. Until then, it was a collection of potentially catastrophic options. Okay, he said, mostly to himself. Diagnostics first. Always run diagnostics. He selected the diagnostic option, and a progress bar appeared. Estimated time, 30 seconds. At least the ancient aliens understood the importance of fast processing. While the system checked itself, Torres pulled up the threat analysis. What he saw made his stomach drop. The hostile force wasn't just one species. It was a coalition of aggressive civilizations that had apparently been conquering and assimilating other cultures for millennia. They called themselves the Consuming Tide, which was about as subtle as a brick to the face. How many ships? Admiral Vexthorn asked suddenly at Torres's shoulder. I can't see your display, Sergeant, but I can see your expression, and it concerns me. Torres swallowed. The system is detecting approximately 15,000 vessels of various classes. They're organized into a formation that the database is flagging as a, quote, full-scale extermination fleet. The Admiral's skin changed to a dark purple that Torres's cultural database helpfully identified as the Kralix version of going pale. 15,000? That's what it says. And according to the historical records, this is the same fleet composition they used on the civilization that built the Relic. Except that was 50,000 years ago. So presumably they've had time to upgrade their weapons. Dr. Mortenson was frantically typing on his datapad. This doesn't make sense. We've had no reports of any major hostile force in this region of space. Our long-range sensors would have detected. They're using some kind of stealth technology. Torres interrupted, reading from the displays. The Relic sensors are way more advanced than ours. It's been tracking them for weeks, but nobody could access the data because nobody could turn the thing on. The diagnostic completed. The results were mixed. The defense network consisted of approximately 8,000 automated stations scattered across this spiral arm of the galaxy. About 70% were still functional. The rest had either broken down over the millennia or been destroyed by spatial phenomena. Still, that left 5,600 weapon platforms, each one powerful enough to take on multiple capital ships. Can you activate the network? Admiral Vexthorn asked. Technically? Yes. The system keeps prompting me to authorize full defensive activation, but there's a catch. There's always a catch, Lieutenant Chen sighed. Torres pointed at a flashing warning in his vision. The network requires a full system test before combat deployment. It's been dormant for 50,000 years. Without running the test sequence, there's a 30% chance of catastrophic malfunction. How long does the test take? The Admiral pressed. 6 hours. We don't have 6 hours to spare before we need to inform the Council and begin evacuation procedures. Yeah, about that. Torres navigated to another menu. The Relic's got pretty strong opinions about not involving committees in time-critical situations. There's literally a subroutine that locks out external communications during defense operations to prevent, and I'm quoting here, interference from administrators who confuse talking about solutions with implementing them. The observation chamber went very quiet. Dr. Mortensen broke the silence. Are you telling me that this weapon system is designed to function without oversight? I'm telling you it's designed to function without bureaucratic paralysis. There's a difference. The operator still has to make decisions, but those decisions can't be overruled by someone 3 levels up the chain of command who's never seen combat. Admiral Vexthorn's tactical mind was clearly racing. A decentralized command structure with authority vested in the field operator. Unorthodox, but given the builder's fate, the logic is sound. He fixed Torres with a serious look. Sergeant, I need to know your assessment. Can you operate this system effectively? Torres looked at the interface floating in his vision, the weight of 5,600 weapon platforms suddenly very real. Sir, I fix coffee machines and air conditioning units. I'm not qualified to run a superweapon. The Relic disagrees with that assessment. The Relic has been sitting in standby mode for 50,000 years. Maybe its judgment is impaired. Or, Commander Quilnix's telepathic voice interjected, perhaps it recognizes something in you that you don't yet see in yourself. The ability to solve problems without overthinking them. To act when action is needed. Torres wanted to argue, but the countdown timer in his vision reminded him they were wasting time. The consuming tide was 72 hours away. If he started the diagnostic now, it would complete with time to spare before the fleet arrived. Okay, he said finally. I'll run the test, but I want it on record that this is the weirdest day of my life, and I once accidentally vented an entire cargo bay into space because I pressed the wrong button. That was you? Lieutenant Chen asked. Not relevant right now. Torres took a deep breath and selected the Initiate System test option. The Relic hummed, and across the galaxy, thousands of ancient weapon platforms began waking up for the first time in 50 millennia. In his vision, progress bars appeared, each one representing a different station powering up and running self-checks. It was like watching the universe's slowest and most important loading screen. Now what? He asked. Now, Admiral Vexthorn said grimly, we wait, and prepare for the possibility that the Council will want to relieve you of duty and assign this responsibility to someone more, shall we say, senior. Torres groaned. They're going to make this complicated, aren't they? Sergeant, the Admiral replied, complicated is what bureaucracies do best. Turns out Admiral Vexthorn was an optimist. The situation didn't get complicated. It got apocalyptically bureaucratic. Within 2 hours of the news reaching the Galactic Council, the cosmic importance was swarming with officials, each one more decorated and self-important than the last. They'd converted the observation chamber into an impromptu command center, which mostly meant a lot of people standing around having loud opinions. Torres sat in the corner, monitoring the diagnostic progress while trying to ignore the chaos. The system test was 40% complete. Everything was looking good so far. Weapon platforms were coming online in sequence, running through their own internal checks, and reporting back with satisfactory results. The ancient aliens had built their tech to last. This is highly irregular, Chancellor Roxton declared for the 15th time. He was a Quellan with elaborate head crests that changed colors based on his emotional state. Currently, they were flashing angry reds and oranges. A military asset of this magnitude cannot be operated by a single individual, especially one with no command experience. The Relic disagrees, Admiral Vexthorn pointed out calmly. The Relic is a machine. Machines follow programming. They don't make command decisions. Torres couldn't help himself. Actually, according to the historical files, the Relic's programming was designed by people who watched their entire civilization get wiped out, while the government debated proper authorization procedures. They specifically programmed it to avoid that scenario. Roxton's crests turned purple with indignation. Are you suggesting that proper oversight is what caused their extinction? I'm saying that's what they thought, and since they built this thing, their opinion kind of matters. Dr. Mortensen stepped forward, his datapad clutched like a shield. Chancellor, I've analyzed the energy signatures and system architecture. With proper study, we could potentially transfer control to a more qualified operator, someone with actual military training. How long would that take? Admiral Vexthorn asked. 3, perhaps 4 weeks of careful analysis. The hostile fleet arrives in 67 hours. Then we evacuate, another official suggested. Ambassador Klex was a Vorporian, his gaseous form swirling anxiously in his containment suit. We cannot risk activating an unknown weapon system without proper testing and oversight. Torres checked his display. The testing is happening right now, 45% complete, and it's not unknown. I've got a complete operational manual in my head courtesy of the neural interface. A manual you've had access to for less than 3 hours, Mortensen snapped. Hardly sufficient time to master a system of this complexity. Good thing the interface is idiot-proof then. The room erupted in arguments. One faction wanted to proceed with Torres as operator, but with oversight from a military committee. Another wanted to continue trying to transfer control to someone else. A third group was advocating for immediate evacuation and abandoning this region of space entirely. The fourth group was arguing that they needed to form a subcommittee to evaluate the recommendations of the other 3 groups. Torres tuned them out and focused on the diagnostic. 50% now. The system was running beautifully. Each weapon platform was a masterpiece of engineering, combining energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and some kind of exotic matter manipulation technology that the interface helpfully labeled as probability disruption, which sounded both awesome and terrifying. His comm unit chimed. Private channel. He accepted it. Torres, it's Lieutenant Chen. I'm in engineering with Ramirez and Kowalski. We heard what's happening up there. Yeah, it's a disaster. How's the coffee machine? Functional. Listen, we've been talking. If you need help with anything at all, we've got your back. We know you can fix things. That's what we do down here. We solve problems while everyone else argues about them. Torres felt a lump in his throat. Ramirez and Kowalski were his maintenance crew buddies. They'd spent countless shifts together keeping the cosmic importance running, while the officers took the credit. Thanks, Chen. I might take you up on that. The diagnostic finishes in what, 3 hours? About that, yeah. And then what? Then I activate the defense grid and hope I don't accidentally blow up a moon or something. You've never accidentally blown up a moon before. You'll be fine. Torres laughed despite himself. There's a first time for everything. He closed the channel and looked up at the arguing officials. They'd moved on to debating the legal implications of activating a pre-council weapon system without proper authorization forms. Someone was actually suggesting they needed to get approval from the Artifact Ethics Committee, which apparently was a real thing. The diagnostic hit 60%. Torres pulled up the tactical display. The consuming tide was maintaining course and speed. In 65 hours, they'd reach the outer colonies. In 70, they'd be in range of major population centers. Every hour of delay meant millions more people in danger. Excuse me, Torres said loudly. Nobody heard him. Excuse me. Still nothing. He stood up and shouted, Hey, the murder fleet doesn't care about your committees. That got their attention. Sergeant Torres, Chancellor Roxton said icily, you will address this assembly with proper respect. With respect, Chancellor, we're running out of time for respect. The diagnostic finishes in 3 hours. That gives us 62 hours to get the defense grid in position and ready before the shooting starts. Every minute you spend arguing is a minute we're not preparing. The proper protocols must be followed, Mortensen insisted. The people who followed proper protocols are dead. The people who built this thing specifically designed it to work around protocols. Maybe we should listen to them. Admiral Vexthorn stepped forward. The sergeant makes a valid point. We can debate command structure after the threat is neutralized. Right now, we need to focus on survival. And what if the sergeant makes a mistake? Ambassador Klex asked. What if he activates the wrong system or targets friendly vessels? Torres brought up the targeting interface. The system has friend or foe identification built in. It's already mapped every registered ship in Council space. It won't fire on friendlies unless I specifically override the safeties, which would require about 15 confirmations and a voice authorization. Which you could provide, Mortensen pointed out. Which I could, but won't, because I'm not an idiot. Look, I get it, you don't trust me. I'm a sergeant who fixes air conditioners. But the Relic chose me, and right now I'm the only option that doesn't involve everyone dying while you draft a proposal for a committee to review your committee's committee. Chancellor Roxton's crests were cycling through colors so fast it was making Torres dizzy. This is highly unprecedented. So is an extinction-level invasion fleet, Torres shot back. The room fell silent. In the distance, the Relic hummed steadily, its diagnostic churning through 50 millennia of dormant systems and bringing them back to life. The universe was about to remember why the ancient aliens had been left alone, and the only thing standing between survival and galactic conquest was one very annoyed maintenance sergeant who just wanted this shift to end. The diagnostic completed at hour 70-4, which gave Torres exactly 4 hours to get the defense grid fully operational and positioned before the consuming tide arrived. The committee was still debating. Torres stopped caring. Okay, he said, not to anyone in particular. Activating the defense network now. Sergeant, we haven't reached a consensus, Chancellor Roxton protested. Chancellor, with all due respect, the murder fleet doesn't care about your consensus. Torres selected the activation sequence, initiating full defensive deployment. Across the galaxy, 5,600 weapon platforms came fully online. In his vision, Torres could see all of them, thousands of points of light spreading across multiple star systems. The interface was intuitive enough that he could manage the tactical overview, while the system's AI handled the individual targeting and firing solutions. It was like playing the universe's most important video game. All stations report ready status, he announced. Positioning autonomous defense pattern Alpha 7, setting engagement range to maximum, authorizing automated threat response within predefined parameters. Admiral Vexthorn leaned over his shoulder, watching Torres work. You've done this before. No, sir. But the interface is basically a really complicated maintenance terminal. I've used those my whole life. This is just fixing problems on a galactic scale. The consuming tide entered sensor range. 15,000 ships in formation, broadcasting demands for surrender in 200 languages. Torres didn't need the translation. The intent was clear enough. Here they come, he muttered. His hands were steady despite his racing heart. The interface showed him everything. Shield status, weapon charge levels, projected firing solutions. The ancient defense grid had analyzed the enemy fleet composition and identified weaknesses in their formation. All Torres had to do was authorize engagement. Weapons free, he said, engaging hostile fleet. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for decades. The ancient weapon platforms opened fire with devastating precision. Energy beams lanced across space, targeting engines and power cores. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to near light speed, punching through shields like tissue paper. The probability disruption weapons did something that made enemy ships simply stop existing in localized areas of spacetime. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the consuming tide had lost 93% of its fleet. The survivors jumped to hyperspace in full retreat. The ancient defense grid had performed exactly as designed, with zero friendly casualties and minimal ammunition expenditure. Torres sat back, his hands shaking slightly. Well, that happened. The observation chamber was silent. Every official, admiral, and scientist was staring at the tactical display showing the debris field where an invasion fleet had been moments before. Holy shit, Lieutenant Chen whispered over the comm. Yeah, Torres agreed. Admiral Vexthorn was the first to recover. Sergeant Torres, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for your service. You've saved countless lives today. Just doing my job, sir. Torres navigated through the interface, powering down the weapons but keeping the sensors active. The defense grid is returning to standby mode. It'll monitor for threats but won't engage without authorization. The Relic chimed one final time and a new message appeared in Torres's vision. He read it aloud without thinking. To the operator, Congratulations on not being stupid. The Architect Collective approves of your practical approach to problem solving. This system will remain active and available for future threats. Try not to let the bureaucrats screw things up. End message. Despite everything, Torres laughed. Even ancient aliens understood the fundamental nature of the universe. Then the relic went dark. The holographic interfaces vanished. The connection severed so quickly that Torres gasped. Just like that, it was over. The obelisk returned to being an inert piece of ancient technology, its job complete. Did it just turn itself off? Mortensen asked, rushing forward with his scanner. Looks that way. Torres stood, his legs wobbly. I think it's done with us. But there's so much more we could learn. The historical archives, the technology databases. Doc, I think the relic made its point. It woke up, did its job, and went back to sleep. Maybe that's all it wanted. Chancellor Roxton approached, his crests a neutral blue. Sergeant Torres, the Council will need a full debriefing. Your actions today, while effective, raise significant questions about protocol and chain of command. I'm aware, Chancellor, but the protocols can wait until after we confirm the threat is neutralized, right? Indeed. Admiral Vexthorn, please arrange the debriefing for tomorrow morning. Sergeant, you're dismissed until then. Get some rest. Torres gathered his tools, desperately wanting to escape before someone decided to throw a medal ceremony or, worse, a committee meeting. He made it to the door before Admiral Vexthorn called out. Sergeant, one more thing. The Council is recommending you for promotion. Significant promotion. Your tactical ability and decision-making under pressure were exemplary. Torres froze. Sir, with respect, I don't want a promotion. I beg your pardon? I'm a maintenance tech. I fix things. Coffee machines, air conditioners, occasionally ancient superweapons. Promoting me means meetings, paperwork, and people asking my opinion on things I don't care about. No offense intended. The Admiral's eye stalks tilted in what might have been amusement. You just saved the galaxy, Sergeant. Some recognition is warranted. The Relic saved the galaxy. I just pressed the buttons it told me to press. Anyone could have done it if they'd stopped overthinking long enough to try. That, Commander Quilnix's telepathic voice interjected, is precisely why you were chosen, and why you cannot refuse this recognition. Torres sighed. He knew when he was beaten. Fine, but I'm not giving speeches. We'll see about that, Admiral Vexthorn said with what Torres suspected was a smile. Torres finally escaped to the maintenance corridors where Lieutenant Chen, Ramirez, and Kowalski were waiting with knowing grins. Hero of the galaxy, huh? Ramirez teased. Shut up. This is the worst day of my life. You saved billions of lives, Kowalski pointed out. And now everyone knows my name. Do you know what that means? It means when the coffee machine breaks, I can't pretend I'm busy somewhere else. It means admirals will recognize me in the corridor. It means committees. Torres shuddered dramatically. So many committees. Chen patted his shoulder. Look at the bright side. At least the relic went back to sleep. It can't volunteer you for anything else. Small mercies. They walked together back to engineering, where the familiar hum of ship systems and the comforting chaos of maintenance work awaited. Torres had never been so happy to see a malfunctioning cooling junction in his life. 3 days later, the promotion came through. Sergeant Torres was now Lieutenant Torres, with official commendations from 6 different species and an invitation to speak at the Galactic Military Academy. He ignored the speaking invitation and immediately requested transfer back to maintenance duties. The request was denied. Instead, they assigned him to a new position, Special Liaison for Ancient Technology Integration. It was a fancy title that meant absolutely nothing because there was no more ancient technology to integrate. The relic was still sitting in the observation chamber, completely inert, ignoring every attempt to reactivate it. Torres visited it once, alone, after his shift. The obelisk sat in its velvet-roped enclosure, dark and silent. You could have warned me, he said to it. About the promotion thing, about becoming the guy everyone asks about alien artifacts at parties. The relic predictably said nothing. Yeah, that's what I thought. Torres turned to leave, then paused. Thanks, though, for trusting a coffee machine repair guy to not screw up your ancient defense grid. That was pretty cool. For just a moment, he could have sworn the geometric patterns on the Relic's surface flickered with a faint blue light. But when he blinked, it was gone. Probably just his imagination. Probably. Torres left the observation chamber and headed back to engineering. Lieutenant Chen had reported a strange noise coming from the environmental systems in Section 7. It was probably nothing serious. Just another routine repair job. Exactly the way Torres liked it. The galaxy was safe, the coffee machines were working, and somewhere out there, ancient aliens were probably laughing at the bureaucrats who'd tried to complicate their perfectly simple defense system. Some things, Torres reflected, were universal. Like the fundamental truth that sometimes the best solution was to just fix the damn problem and worry about the paperwork later. He smiled, grabbed his toolkit, and got back to work.